You're listening to Ideal Practice, episode number 167. Today, guys, I'm going to tell you the truth about the nightmare that I have been through with insurance billing companies. In other words, those folks that you hire to help you process your insurance billing in your private practice if you are working with third-party providers. I've mentioned this off and on a few times, but I've never really told about what that was. So today I thought, you know what? I think it's time. Today's the day. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Pitts-Reeves, and with over 2 decades of experience in the private practice world, I've built my 6-figure business while learning a lot of lessons the hard way. This is the first podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of energy, alignment, and strategy to build a practice that is profit-centered, but people-forward. This is the Ideal Practice Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Ideal Practice Podcast. This is Wendy Pitts-Reeves, your host. I'm so happy to be hanging out with you again today. I hope you're doing well. I hope life is good and that your practice is just rocking and rolling. It's fall, so there's lots of stuff going on in the air. I'm curious about you guys. It's conference season, and I would love to know, what conferences are you going to? Are there any in-person conferences that you're attending out there that you love? Here in my area in Knoxville and in Tennessee, the big annual conference is the Fall Psychiatric Symposium, which is 2 or 3 days long, full of all kinds of good stuff. It's quite the annual networking opportunity here locally. What are you guys going to? I have been kind of on the search for some new conferences to go to. Of course, as I say that, I'm thinking, what I really want to go to is like a podcast conference, but you don't get CEUs for that. So anyway, shoot me a note and let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys are up to. Now, for us today, I felt like it was time to finally tell you some of the stories and some of the things I've learned about what to do, what not to do if you are going to do insurance billing in your practice. Now, a few weeks ago, I had a guest on here, Jeremy Zug with Practice Solutions, which was great. We had a really great conversation. I'll be sure and link that in the show notes below. You know, whether you decide to take insurance or not depends on the industry you're in. First of all, not everybody can take insurance. If you're a massage therapist, you probably can't. But if you're a psychotherapist, then that's one of the decisions you have to make, right, as a practice owner. So you may have heard me mention off and on here that I had a full-time thriving group practice for a very long time. And my personal part of that, I saw 25, 26 people a week for years and years and years and years and years. And up until about 10 years ago, most of that was insurance based. I always had a few private pay folks here and there, but by and large, I was on lots of different panels because I thought that's what you had to do. And just like everybody else does. And so I was always struggling with the whole insurance claim processing bit. Now, I'm a systems-oriented person, so of course I had systems for dealing with that, but they were no match for the challenges of insurance billing. Not for me. Now, for some of you who this comes more naturally to, you may not have some of the problems that I had, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the things I ran into early on and some of the things I've learned over time. First of all, when I first started my practice, filing an insurance claim wasn't that big a deal once I kind of got the hang of it because I didn't have that many people. And I was just filing claims for whatever was happening right now. And, you know, my practice was really tiny. It was not that big a deal. Over time, though, what I very quickly ran into, like within the first 6 to 9 months of being in practice, was I started running into that thing that happens where insurance would cover the first, second, and fourth session you had that month, but for some reason would kick the third one back and say that they weren't going to cover it. And then you'd have to file a new claim or argue with them in some way, which took phone calls and all kinds of things. Now, back then, we weren't doing it online, y'all. We were doing this by paper. So it was even slower. But even as we moved into filing claims online, this is something that you run into. The denied claims can make you kind of crazy and what causes those denied claims and all that kind of stuff. So very, very quickly, yours truly got overwhelmed by the whole thing. And that means that it didn't take long for me to make the decision that I was not the one to be handling this and I needed to have help. So, as many of you do, I started looking for and hiring insurance claims processing companies. Now, when I say company, sometimes that company was a single mom who worked in a group practice during the day, understood insurance billing, and was running a small insurance billing business of her own in the evening. Sometimes it was folks who had done lots of different things, like they had been an office manager for a group practice and they went out on their own. It was lots of different things. And often I found them by word of mouth from another therapist or someone else who'd heard about them. Over the course of many years, one of the things I learned was that these small, at least in my experience, these small folks who were like doing this on the side, that almost never worked because life got in the way for them. And when it did, my billing was one of the first things to go. Or so they couldn't keep up with the quantity for one thing. Or as their own business began to grow, they dropped things, whatever. But the smaller practices just never worked. They went out of business. They tried it for a while and decided they didn't like it. Just different things would go wrong. And it was a pain in the butt, y'all, to change. Once you had somebody handling your claims for you, and to pull that back and do it yourself or pull that back and go to somebody else, that was really difficult. So you don't quit on people lightly. Like you don't quit without a really good reason. But over the course of seriously 15 years, 20 years, in the end, I switched billing providers 7 different times. Sometimes that happened because they quit the business. Sometimes that happened because they made mistakes in my billing that they didn't catch and I could not tolerate. Sometimes that happened, for lots of different reasons, whatever. But one reason or another, I was like, yeah, this isn't a good fit. I think I'm gonna find somebody else. So 7 times. The last billing provider that I hired, I felt like I had finally got it right. It was indeed one of these folks, like I just mentioned, someone who had been the office manager for a very successful group practice in Knoxville. I had been hearing about this woman for years. She was well known. She left the group practice she managed and started her own billing company. And it was, in fact, a company. She and her husband ran it. They had several people who worked under them. They had a very, very solid reputation. And she cost more. Like the investment was a higher level, but that's okay. I lost so much money in denied claims or sloppy billing that it was worth it to me at this point to hire somebody who knew what they were doing. So I did not regret that. And she indeed turned out to be every bit as good as I had heard. Not only like from the very beginning, the first thing that happened when I hired her was she came to the office and sat down with a group of us and talked us through what would get a claim kicked out, what kind of record keeping we needed to do, what would make a claim much more successful, things to like sort of red flags to look out for, that kind of stuff. Like from the very beginning, she did a training with us, some of which I had known before, but some of which I had not. That was incredibly helpful. She also had a very tight system for how she tracked claims, when they came in, when they were filed, when they were paid, if there was a problem with them, and the co-pays and all that went along with it, the co-insurance, the client accounts. She had a whole system for that. That was really helpful. And her system was easy for us to step into. That's how good she was. So I was quite excited about working with her after having had quite a bit of experience at that point with folks who were adequate, but only barely. Well, we ended up working with her for about 2 years, I think, when, quite to my dismay, she came to me and let me know that she and her husband had made a decision to get out of the mental health billing side of their business altogether. See, part of what drew me to her was she not only worked with people like us, group counseling practices, but she also worked with hospitals and med-surg practices, primary care doctors. So she really understood the whole medical world. That's part of what I loved about her. But lo and behold, and this was something else I learned, the mental health side of billing was so complicated and so full of problems that it was not as profitable for her as it was to do the med surg billing. That was much more clean cut, much more straightforward, much easier to scale. So they made a business decision to get out of the mental health world altogether, which was not a small thing because I knew that she had been working in mental health for probably 20 years herself at that point. Well, when that happened, I was so discouraged. I thought, you know what? I am not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore because if she couldn't make it work or chose not to, then I didn't think anybody else was going to. Now, there are some caveats to this that I'm going to come back to in just a minute, but I just wanted you to know where I was. Okay. So when that last company said, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore, I was like, screw it. I'll do it myself. Except that I knew that I couldn't do it myself. I know my weaknesses, and this was a big one. So what I did at that point was I hired a friend to come and work in my physical office and do my insurance billing in person. Now, my practice, y'all, to be clear, we ran things a little different than a lot of group practices do. In my practice, each person was responsible for the money side of their own practice. Okay. We had things set up a little bit differently. So I wasn't billing for other people. This was just for me. And it was still that difficult. Although a lot of people in my practice were using the same woman. But anyway, when she left, I ended up hiring somebody and I set up a space in my building and I bought her a computer. I got her office all set up. I bought her all the stuff she needed, the equipment she needed. We set up online. So we started setting up portals to work with all the various insurance companies. And she was somebody I had done other projects with who was extremely organized and quite type A about such things. I knew she would be excellent, and she was. She took my pitiful stack of unpaid bills and invoices and messy claims and began to dive into them to clean them up. We began to implement a system for tracking payments with clients and following up when payments didn't happen. Like she really did do the job. And it was great because she was literally next door. And all I had to do was go down the hall to see how she was doing or see if she had a question. And all she had to do was come down the hall to ask me when she had one. So that actually did work really well. One of the things that I learned through all of this, y'all, was that nobody cares about your money like you do. Like even the best people that I hired who I know were professional and well-meaning, who had high integrity, they would make mistakes and not catch them, or they would not go back and clean them up because they just couldn't be bothered. They had too many other things to do. Well, once I had this in-house person, that stopped because I could see what she was doing. And we had it set up where I could literally go through the files. I could see her ledgers and in real time. That worked better than anything else I've ever done. And that was great because nobody cares about your money like you do. So even if you do hire somebody who's excellent, whether they are in-house or whether it's another company, guys, you still need to be paying attention. Do not make the mistake of saying, I don't have to think about this anymore. I've handed it over to experts. They're the professionals. They'll make sure it's done. Do not make that mistake. A long time ago, early on the podcast, I interviewed a woman named Kim Tolson, Tolson. I'll be sure and link to that down below, about her experience with billing companies. She lost $12,000 with one company because they had been making a mistake that she did not catch. So, boy, that was a heck of a story. You should definitely go back and listen to that one. So consider this a warning. Small companies often don't last, or if they do, they're going to make mistakes. But even the big companies, no matter who you hire, nobody cares about your money like you do. So you can delegate your billing to somebody else, but do not abdicate your responsibility for keeping an eye on it. Make sure that you are an active, ongoing, engaged participant in your own billing, no matter who's doing it. Now, I do want to make a couple of recommendations to you. Systems are huge, and many of you are not great at this side of things. This is the number side of your business. I know a lot of you struggle with it. I will tell you, if you are inclined to do this yourself, Bless her heart, Kim Tolson, the one that did that episode I was just talking about, she developed a course teaching, because what she did with that was she learned how to manage her own insurance billing. She didn't hire somebody else. She just did it herself. And that turned into a course that she now teaches that is a thriving course. I think it's called Bill Like a Boss, I think is what it's called. I'll be sure and link to her down below or to that episode. Definitely go check that out. I have not taken the course. I'm not endorsing it or not endorsing it. I've not experienced it personally, but I really liked her and I like what I've seen in her over time. So I bet that's a good course to take if you want to learn how to handle this yourself. If you want to hire it out, that last company I worked with, they would have been fine if they'd stayed in it. They really were doing a great job. Just recently here on the podcast, I interviewed Jeremy Zug with Practice Solutions. Is it Practice Solutions? Am I getting that right? Yeah, Practice Solutions. Definitely go check him out. I told him after meeting him, I said, man, where were you when I was dealing with all this? Because I absolutely would have reached out to him because I think he runs a really fine shop, organized. He does have a team of folks who work under him, and he is only focused on mental health. It's kind of the opposite, right? So he's going to get this really well. In fact, he has a podcast where he talks about kind of playing the insurance game. And I think it's called The Claim Game. You should definitely check that out if you want to know more about that. If you want to do it yourself, look into Kim. If you want to hire somebody, look into Jeremy. I am not an affiliate. I have not personally worked with them in this way, but I sure liked what I heard from them when I talked with them. And at least it's a place to start. Okay. Where I went with this ultimately was I walked away from the whole insurance thing completely. There was a moment back in 2016 or so, I think it was, when Blue Cross sent me the annual contract in the mail. Yes, in the mail. And they had cut my hourly rate, the reimbursement rate for my level of licensure. It wasn't a big cut, but it was a cut. At that point, they were barely paying me more than I was making in the 90s. It was insane and insulting. And in that moment, when I got that contract in the mail and I looked at the fee schedule and saw what they had done, I was terrified about making the leap from insurance. I had been whittling it away. I had slowly but surely cut various contracts. I had started with the ones I hardly ever saw anybody with that one. And then the ones that were the most irritating, and then the ones that didn't pay very well. But in my particular geographic location, Blue Cross was one of the biggest providers. And by that point, y'all, I had gone through a divorce. I had 2 teenage kids at home and I had a house payment, and walking away from insurance was really scary. But also by that point, I had been working with a really good coach for a couple of years. I had learned a lot about marketing and packages and how to run a business, acting like a business owner instead of just a social worker, quote, just, unquote. I don't mean that the way that sounds. But I learned how to think like a business owner, and I was kind of ready for something better. And so that day when I tore up that contract, that very moment, I started telling my clients, I'm going to be making some changes to how I run my practice. I just want to let you know that this is coming. Don't worry. Don't panic. I'm giving them a 90-day notice. So we've got 3 months to figure this out. I'm going to take good care of you. Either you and I will figure out a way to make this work for you here, or I will help you find somebody else who's better. One way or another, you're going to be okay. I promise. And I did do that. I kept my promise to my clients. What I ended up doing was developing packages that made the transition to self-pay a little bit more manageable for them. I got better at talking about the work that I did and the value that I brought. I stopped apologizing for what I charged, and I brought more confidence to the table, not only in myself, but in them, and that it was worth it to them to invest in themselves through the work that we would do together. And all of that came from the coaching I had been investing in for literally a few years at that point. So I made that transition quite well and without any problems. I didn't really lose anybody. I had one young adult who opted not to continue, but she was kind of ready not to continue. So it was fine. So for me, my way of dealing with billing companies was to stop needing them at all. And today I only run a cash pay, a self-pay practice, and most of my clients pay me when they schedule. If not, they pay the day they come. I don't have any billing to keep up with anymore. And for me personally, that has been an extremely good fit. It has made all the difference in the world in terms of my peace of mind. and in the hassle factor and in just the level of things that are chasing me all the time, because I'm just not good at that. So that has worked for me, and it's worked for my clients. Now, I have coached folks who were either in a geographic area where they just really felt like they needed to be on insurance panels. That's fine. Or from a values place, like it was for them, it was a matter of being in alignment with what they felt was right. They wanted to be on at least one, if not two or three of their local panels because they felt like it was the right thing to do. That's fine. Your ideal practice is your ideal practice, right? But if you do choose to work with a billing practice, I'm going to encourage you to find a billing provider that you vet properly. Get reviews. Ask them for the names of other customers of theirs that you can talk to. And in particular, folks who have been with them for 2 or 3 years or longer. That's what I would recommend because everybody starts off great. How do they do over time? I would ask them how they handle clawbacks when companies reach out to you. How often does that happen when people ask for, when companies reach out to you and ask for their money back? How often do they have denied claims? What tips do they have for you to make your partnership be more successful? Are they willing to teach you how to do a better job? Do they make you feel silly when you ask questions? They should not. They should make you feel empowered and comfortable asking any question you want to. Do they have records that you can get into at any time so you can see the status of all of your clients and all of your claims at any time? Like, make sure you have access to those kinds of things. But more than anything, I think just do your due diligence, ask lots of questions, and then listen to your heart, listen to your intuition. And then if you decide to try them, I would set up a 90-day trial. And I would pay very close attention to what works and what doesn't and what feels fine and what is a little bit rough during those 90 days. And then have a sit down with them to talk about whether or not to continue. If it's pretty good and you're happy so far, then keep it going with maybe a tweak or two. If there's anything that doesn't feel right to you, I wouldn't go any further. So that's what I have to offer you for today, because billing was a real pain for me for a really, 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 really long time. That last company was great. If they had stuck with it, I'd probably still be doing insurance today. I'm not real sorry about that part. That turned out to be a blessing in disguise. But for you, I want you to design a practice that works for you. So hopefully some of what I've shared today will help you do exactly that. All right. Let me know if you have specific questions or if there's anything else I can do to guide you. I'm going to give you a link to Jeremy and to Kim in the down below. Again, I'm not an affiliate for them, and I have not had personal experience with them. So always do your own due diligence. But I certainly think they're worth talking to, and they don't even know I'm saying that. I'm just putting it out there. All right, everyone, have a great week. I hope this has been helpful to you. I would love to know what your number one takeaway is and what your advice is. If you've been doing this yourself, what have you learned that you would share with others? Talk to me about that too. Have a great week, y'all, and I will see you next week right here on the Ideal Practice Podcast. Bye now. Hey, y'all. If this program has become important to you, if Ideal Practice matters, it would mean so much to me if you'd be willing to take just a minute to do one or two of the following things. First of all, would you follow or subscribe to the show here at Ideal Practice? Following me helps you because you'll never miss an episode, but it helps me as well for all kinds of reasons. To do that, all you have to do is go to the show page for Ideal Practice on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. There, just click on the plus sign that you'll usually find in the top right-hand corner, or click on the word follow that you're going to find somewhere there on that page. Of all the things, this really is the most important thing you can do for the podcast itself. While you're there, it would be extra special if you would be willing to give me a 5-star rating, and even better than that, a review with your own words. Your words matter. And when you write what you feel, what you think, you uplift and encourage others. And I love that. If you want to go a step further than that, take your favorite episode or two, one of the ones that has meant a lot to you, and share it with a friend. Could you do one or two of those things for me? I promise I will love you forever. You guys matter to me, and I value your support more than I can possibly say. Thank you, sweet friend, for anything you can do to help me out and support the show. I'll see you again soon.